Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Chantelle Talks, the interview series I've launched here on my YouTube channel to help you and me navigate our early career, determine our purpose at work, and get inspired and motivated by the best and brightest across media, technology, business, and so much more. For today's episode, I'll be sitting down with Sarah Neill. Sarah is a Griffith MBA graduate. She has a background in marketing, global experience, and she just recently founded the startup Mys Tyler, a body-relevant social commerce platform with the aim of creating a diverse community, empowering users, and combating the narrow representation of bodies we see in mainstream and social media, all while addressing the fit issue that costs the industry $1 trillion annually. I came across Sarah at the Vogue Co's event I went to not too long ago. I think this is going to be really invaluable for a lot of you who are potentially thinking of founding your own business one day, or simply want to hear the experiences and advice of a successful woman in STEM. Before I get into the interview, I did want to say, be sure to give the video a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying this series, because that will enable me to continue to film videos and reach out to so many incredible people and get them on board as well. And if you do have anyone in particular that you want me to reach out to, be sure to let me know and I'm happy to try and get them on the channel. And lastly, I also created an Instagram account for the Chantelle Talks series, so if you want to give that a follow, I'll be updating you guys on episodes, posting snippets and sneak peeks, so it'll be really cool if you could follow that. But without further ado, I would love to welcome you to another episode of Chantelle Talks with Sarah Neill. Firstly, thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me on the channel. So I wanted to start off with your early career. So you graduated with a degree in marketing. When you entered the workforce, would you say you had a fixed idea of your purpose and what you wanted to achieve?
No, I had no idea. Even when I went to university, I didn't understand what different careers were. What I ended up studying was economics, but I majored in marketing and organizational behavior. It's not that I loved economics. That was my least favorite subject at school, but it was the one that my parents thought was the most sensible. Then I went into that degree, and what I ended up loving was the marketing, and I also loved the psychology. So I ended up picking up electives that were all psychology, such that when I graduated, I could have graduated with an economics degree or a psychology degree. And I always thought I would go back and do a master's in psychology and become a psychologist because I just found it so interesting. So I finished and I wanted to work in marketing. I actually took a first job in recruitment, which is basically sales, which I loved at the time because I thought I love, being performance driven. I like to work hard and see results. That's really driving for me, to know that I'm contributing and to know that I'm doing a good job. And recruitment is very sales driven. So you have commissions and you're tracked. So that's why I took that role. I thought that would be really interesting. But then I had an opportunity to move into more of a sales role with Boost Mobile. And there I started working in marketing a little bit more. So I was doing sales promotions and merchandising and things like that, which was an awesome job. And then I moved into advertising finally, which I thought was like the sexy bit. And I moved to London, started working for an advertising agency in telecommunications because I had the Boost Mobile experience.
Yeah.
Advertising was really fun. And I spent the first 10 years of my career after that sort of bouncing between advertising agencies and client side in marketing roles. And I just really loved it. I never really was thinking about what next or what was my future. I just really enjoyed, I guess, jumping into products, learning a lot and problem solving, which essentially is what you're doing in those roles. On the advertising side, you're really trying to understand your users and the problems they have so that you can tell them about your solutions. But then on the client side, you're really thinking about how can you actually change the product to be a better solution. It's very much like the way I see advertising and marketing is it's problem solving and it's communicating that problem. Yeah, I guess that's the first half of my career. And then the more you start to understand that you can actually change products to better solve problems, then it starts, I guess, you on the track of becoming, I think, like an entrepreneur. The more you understand problems, I think that's where ideas come from. Understanding problems and then, thinking about ways to solve them that are different to what exists currently. And so I moved to New York and I had an idea for a way that we could create a new product that I thought would solve a problem. And I pitched it to the owner of the company thinking that he would give me a budget to test out this product. But instead of saying, here's a budget to do this, he gave me $1 million and said, you're the CEO now, create the company.
Wow.
So that was in 2012. So I created a company called Doodad, which was a SIM card for travelers. Pretty much from that point, it's just been very hard to go back to, to not innovating, because like once you start to realize that you can execute and that you can really drive change, I think that's what I've become passionate passionate about. Like, it's very hard for me to now see a problem and not want to solve it.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. So I guess going back to how you've worked all over the world, really, in London and New York, you mentioned, how did those opportunities come up? And what would you say is the value in working overseas? I know for a lot of myself and my peers, we really wanted to be able to travel during uni or now when first finishing the degree. So what would you say is the value, and do you recommend that in future years when the world opens up again?
So during my undergrad, I went to Calgary on exchange. So I spent a semester in Canada. That was like my first experience of being away from home, being anywhere foreign, really. Canada is very similar. I mean, it was English speaking, culturally very similar. But I went to Calgary in the middle of winter, which is basically like -40 every day.
Oh my gosh.
Small town, full of cowboys. For some place so similar, it was like so different. Like it was the first time I'd seen snow. It was just the most amazing experience. I went there not knowing anyone. And I think for me, traveling, I love things that are new. I love new experiences, meeting new people. I love being thrown in the deep end. I love having to figure stuff out. And so from that time, I backpacked around Europe in the summer holidays and just loved it. And so after that, I was like, okay, I definitely want to travel again. And I think there's a big difference between visiting places and living places. So I knew I definitely wanted to like live somewhere for a few years. I moved to London thinking that was going to be like my amazing experience, but I hated London. I really struggled living there. For me, like the weather and, the gray and the cold, but also to be fair, my friends in finance, they were all earning, 3 times what I was earning, and I was the poor person in advertising. So I think if I'd had more money, I would have enjoyed it more. When I left London, I knew I wanted to go and I still wanted to really like spend a few years overseas. And so that's when I decided to move to New York. And in both those instances, I didn't have a job and then move. I decided to move and then find a job. You can be lucky, and if you want to work overseas, find a job before you go. But most of the times you have to be there to start networking and going to interviews and being on the ground in person to meet people to get a job. I basically thought to myself, I'll go to New York, I'll spend 3 months. If I can get a job, great. And if I can't, I'll spend 3 months in New York and I'll come home and it'll be okay. Yeah. So for me, I was just like so determined to live overseas. I mean, I was in New York for nearly a decade and wow. I just love that city. I was planning to come home eventually, but the reason I came home when I did was to start Mys Tyler, because it is really hard overseas when you need a work visa to be there to be an entrepreneur. It's quite restrictive. So coming home, I don't need to earn a salary. I can sort of like, be an entrepreneur with the support of family around.
Well, I guess going on to Mys Tyler now then, which I think is such an incredible idea, and I've already downloaded the app. So I'm so happy that I heard about it at the Vogue Codes event. But for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about what Mys Tyler is and what made you want to start it.
Mys Tyler is a fashion app for women, helping you find and buy clothes that fit. I don't have a background in fashion. I have a background in telecommunications and marketing. But as I mentioned before, I like problem solving, and this was my problem. In New York, people are super fashionable. You can wear like the most crazy outfits without anyone blinking an eye. Like you can turn up to a party in a cocktail dress or tracksuit pants. So it's a place where you can really experiment. And I love the idea of wearing cool things, but I just was so bad at going out and knowing what to pick up. And I just found shopping like really tiresome. And I had all these friends who were just so good. They enjoyed shopping. They knew what to pick up. They always put together outfits that looked amazing. I mean, often I would have something in my wardrobe that I never wore. And so I was like, just take it. If anybody wants this, take it. I have had it for 5 years. I haven't worn it. And then my friend wears it the next week and it looks like the most cool item ever because they've styled it properly. I used to ask my friends to help me buy clothes. And what I realized was that they were really good at shopping for themselves, but they weren't very good at shopping for me because they'd perfected the art of shopping for somebody who was blonde and 5'2" and a size 10 and, with a curvier figure. And so they didn't know how to dress for me. So I used to just wish that I could go onto Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook and find fashion influencers that were the same height and size as me. So I could follow somebody who essentially looked like me that was more fashionable and just copy them. This was 6 years ago. So over 6 years, I've been talking about this idea a lot. And it's just the idea that people keep saying, I'd love that too. Like, why don't you build this out of all your ideas? This is the one that we'd love to have. So that gave me a lot of confidence that this was something that would resonate with women and be really helpful. Layered upon that, I worked for a company called Mint Mobile in the US, and we launched affiliate marketing. And affiliate marketing is a kind of new, it's an old turned new acquisition channel that's become really powerful. So we, as Mint Mobile, we're telling brands, if you drive customers to us, we'll give you X dollars as thank you. So I started to understand this whole world, and I was like, this would work perfectly for Mys Tyler, because women can then just show you what they're wearing, add a link to it, and then we can get paid if people buy. I guess I'd had that validation, and then I'd had this sort of like experience with something that could become the way that we would monetize the business. And so I came back to start working on it. The way the app works is that you sign up, you put in your details of your height, your size, your bra size, your coloring, and then we show you all of our contributors, so women who are showing you their clothes, and we rank them from people that are most like you at the top to least like you at the bottom. So as you go through, you've essentially got your body double at the top, but you might not like their style, so you may not follow them. So you'd go through and you just follow people, but it's served up so it's body relevant. And then you essentially have a feed which is now body and style relevant. Everything is hyper personalized to you. So anything that you see, not only does it look good on them, but it'll also look good on you. And hopefully it means that we sort of remove that fit issue. When I decided to create this, I just thought it was a better experience for shopping. But what we found through this process is that there are so many women who don't feel represented when they look at clothes in media. If you're not size 8 and blonde and 5'10" and blue-eyed and 20, so actually you'd probably be fine. If you don't fit that mold, which, like maybe 5% do, then you do not see yourself represented. And so the majority of women have had to buy clothes of people who don't look like them and just kind of guess at what it's going to look like when they get it. The fit issue is so big. So many items don't fit properly, and it can feel really demoralizing when you think it's your body that's not right, as opposed to it being just the clothes aren't good fit. What we're finding is that women are using Mys Tyler and just feeling more body confident because they're seeing diversity of bodies, and it's making them feel included and, normal and represented and just part of a community where they fit.
That's so wonderful. And that must feel really rewarding as well to see that sort of payoff and response from people.
Yeah. I mean, the messages that we get are really amazing. Like we had, one the other day that just said, I've been searching for an app like this my whole life. Like I've never seen myself represented. It's actually making me feel better about my body. Another woman who actually reached out and said, thank you. I feel content. I've spent my whole life feeling uncomfortable with my body. And now at the age of 78, I feel human. Like it's really resonating, and we've got women of all ages.
Well, there we go. To people watching, be sure to download Mys Tyler. In regards to being able to leave a steady job and pursue Mys Tyler, that's obviously very overwhelming and it's a massive risk. So what made you want to take that leap and come back to Australia to do that?
So I had a good job in New York, and I was able to have a little bit of savings on the side. So after I shut down Doodad, my company, I joined a company and I was their chief of staff and ran corporate development, which is a lot of innovation. But on the side, I started building apps. So I had this bug now. I wanted to be a builder and a creator. So I used basically my savings. And so I didn't have any savings. I used my savings to basically invest and start creating apps myself. It's really hard to do something on the side and make it successful. I think you can start doing stuff on the side, but when it gets big enough, you either need to commit more time and energy to it, or it's not going to take off. I was doing all that and I just knew I needed to make this full time. So I came back to Australia and I had I'd saved up a little bit. So I knew that I could live for a year without a salary so that I could start working on Mys Tyler. For anyone who has an idea, there's a lot of stuff you can start doing before you get to the point of leaving a salary or leaving a job or delaying moving into a career. So 6 years ago, in 2014, I registered the domain for Mys Tyler. The name as well, before you go and download it and can't find it, it's MYS, Mys, space Tyler. And that's my styler. Yeah. So that's where the words came from. Yeah, I spent 6 years kind of doing work behind the scenes. I mapped out what the app would look like. So I just drawn sketches of each page of the app and how it would work. So for instance, with Mys Tyler, one thing we needed to think about was if you're launching something like Mys Tyler, where it's a marketplace, you need to have a lot of people on the app from day one for it to be valuable for the first user. And so that's a chicken and egg scenario where how do you attract people before you even have something that's live, that even exists? And so what we did, and this is, I guess, what I'd thought about, 6 6 years ago and been working on was maybe we can use celebrities. So maybe we can like pull publicly available data of different body types and help people find their celebrity body double. Behind the scenes, I was creating a database and I was Googling Jennifer Aniston bra size. And so I started just doing this, like, in my free time in front of the TV, I was just collecting this database because I was like, if I have this database, all I need to do is like create a little algorithm, then I can find people their body matches. There's different things that you can do before you, I guess, move ahead. And, just again, validating it. So speaking to people about the idea or testing it out or creating a landing page, creating social presence, starting to get traction and seeing whether people are interested. And if they're interested enough to like leave their email address or fill out a quiz, sign up for an email newsletter. Then I moved back to Australia and I joined Antler, which is an accelerator program. Startups are really high risk and most of them fail. The stats are something like 96% of startups fail. It's really, really high. So you have to do a lot of things right to make it work. And if you think about a premature baby, it goes into an incubator and the incubator gives it the best chance of survival. It keeps it the perfect temperature and it protects the baby so that it can, get out of that sort of delicate stage. Startups are a little bit like that. So they have these things called incubators or accelerators that are essentially designed to sort of say, this is like a very delicate stage of a startup's life. How can we give them the best chance of survival? And so a program like an accelerator like Antler, what they'll do is they'll say, what are the things that help a company? Well, let's give them mentoring. Let's give them a peer community, of people that they can talk to. Let's give them free office space. Let's give them access to tools like, Amazon Web Services. And let's give them money because companies need money. And so generally these programs, you have to pitch and you pitch like, this is our team, this is our idea. And they'll say, great, we'll give you X dollars and we'll take Y percentage of your company for that. And you'll be part of this program. We'll help you over 3 to 6 months get off the ground. So I applied from New York to Antler in Australia and was accepted. So I came back to join this program.
Yeah. And you spoke at Vocodes about your experience sourcing funding and how that differed to that of male founders. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And a lot of my viewers are women. So how they can respond in meetings with investors and kind of go about that sort of questioning.
Not all businesses need funding. And so a lot of the time you can bootstrap, and if you can bootstrap, it's definitely like a good idea because as soon as you go out to raise money, it sort of changes the game a lot. You have stakeholders that, can start to, have opinions and you have stakeholder management and it gets more complicated. There's definitely ideas that are going to need funding. When you go into these conversations, essentially the investors, as I've said, most startups fail. Early stage investors know the stats. They know that most companies are going to fail. So they're obviously trying to pick the ones that are going to succeed, but they're not interested in a business that's just going to break even because they need the one success to pay back the 20 that weren't successful. Yeah. Early stage investors are getting in because they believe that their business has the ability to be like really big. A rule of thumb is that investors want to see that you could become $1 billion company. To see that, they want to know how you could get to 100 million in revenue in the next 5 years. So that's kind of like, so if you look at a startup pitch deck, like they'll all show you a graph that shows you that by year 5, we've hit 100 million in revenue. You go into these conversations and you're basically telling them, this is our product. This is the problem that we're solving. This is the solution. This is the size of the market. This is how we're going to monetize it. And then, market times the revenue stream is going to equal $100 million. So you're going into a meeting like that. And investors will ask you a series of questions. And so they'll ask you about, the upside. So, tell us like how big could this be? Is the market growing? What are some trends that are, fueling this? Tell me the waves, like all the big exciting stuff. And then they'll ask you questions about all the risks. Like how are you going to retain the early customers that you had? Or when are you going to break even? Or, what happens if Apple goes to do the same thing? Can they compete against, can you compete against them? What's interesting is that when they've looked at 6 years of data of pitch meetings, they find that investors of either gender, so a female investor or a male investor, will ask male founders more questions about the upside and less questions about the downside. And they ask female founders more questions about the downside. Mm-hmm. And as a result of their questioning, women earn 5 to 7 times less money. So if you think about it and you're going into a conversation and you're coming out and you're going, well, what's such a great idea, but we spent the whole time talking about all the risks and all the threats and all the things that could go wrong, I'm going to be less excited about investing in it. But if I meet with somebody else and I'm speaking about like, oh my gosh, this could be the next big thing. Of course, there's lots of risks. but I can't miss out on this one, because if this one's the next Airbnb or Canva, I've got to be in it. That's essentially what happens. So it's a real challenge, because it's an implicit bias that people aren't aware of. Even for me, when I was going into these meetings, I never noticed it. I could tell that I was getting less money and my female peers were getting less money than males, but we were getting the meetings and the questions were serious and they showed that they'd taken care to understand our business. So it seemed really respectful and it seemed great. We were answering the questions, but we were still getting less money. Over time, hopefully investors will become more aware and start asking a more balanced portion of questions. But in the meantime, the lesson for women is that we need to get better at focusing on the upside and selling sort of the potential gains, as opposed to focusing on the potential losses. And it is hard, because when somebody asks you a question about a potential loss, you want to answer the question. You don't want to seem like you're deflecting. So it's kind of an art of being able to answer that and sort of redirect the conversation onto the upside. Because what happens as well is that when you ask about one risk, then it ends up having flow-on effects. And it's like, oh, well, what about this other risk and this other risk? Whereas when you talk about the upside, the questions follow that lead. So if you can take a question that's asking about a downside and answer that and then reframe it and talk about the upside, you can sort of re-navigate that conversation towards the potential gains.
That's really good advice. Well, as you said, a lot of startups fail within the first year. What do you think your main reasons for success have been so far in regards to getting Mys Tyler to where it is today?
I think that there's really understanding a problem really well is always going to set you up. There's one common phrase, which is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Sometimes that you have an idea and you get so committed to that idea that it's not working and you don't pivot. Whereas if you are really trying to solve a problem, then you might understand things differently or discover more data along the way that you realize that there's a better solution. So I think that's really powerful. If you're trying to solve a problem, then it's going to push you in the right direction. The second thing is that you just have to move fast, honestly. You really, I think it'd be very hard for someone who's a perfectionist to do well in early stages of being an entrepreneur, because there's a few things. First of all, you just have to move fast, because time is money and energy, and you learn so much as you go, and there's always more steps than you realize. So you might create a perfect plan and you go, okay, I'm going to do step A, then step B, and then step C. But then when you go to do it, you realize that there's 7 steps before you can get to A, and there's 15 steps before you can get to B, and it's going to take you longer, and you won't know that until you're doing it. The second thing is that you can create a bunch of assumptions. Those assumptions, even if you make them better and better and better with research and testing, they're still assumptions. The minute you get data, that's way more powerful, and it sort of knocks the assumptions out of the way. So for instance, you could ask people, this is my idea, would you pay for it? And you might have 90% of people that said, yes, they're going to pay for it. And then you go and actually go, okay, give me the money. And you might get 5% of people that give you the money. Because even though people say, yeah, I love that, I would pay for it, when it comes down to it, like, well, do I have other priorities right now at this point of time that, win over this? Or, maybe I'm just apathetic and I don't want to spend this now, but like, I'm not lying. I was prepared to pay for that in a hypothetical situation. When it comes to like actually parting with money, it's very different. So I think those 2 things are really important. You just have to move fast and learn. More
generally then, looking back on your career and when you were first starting in the workforce, do you have any advice that you wish you knew, or any advice for people like myself who are just entering the workforce now?
Yes. So I would say that there are so many times in my career where I've not understood something. And as I progressed, I just got a lot more comfortable with asking why and how, and saying that I don't understand. Because so many times you're sitting there and you're just like making notes and you're like, look up later, like I need to figure out what this means later. But the reality is, it's like, if you don't understand it, just ask about it. This is the bigger learning. Sometimes like you ask about it and then they tell you an answer and you still don't get it, but you're like, oh, okay, yep, got it. That's the time that it's just like, forget your pride. Just say, I'm sorry, I know that you just explained it to me, but can you explain it again? I still don't get it. And then honestly, even if you have to do that 5 times, make sure that you understand things as you go, because you'll end up passing so many people because you understand things better than they do, because like everybody's in the same boat and people just don't understand stuff. So feel really comfortable asking why and just making sure that you understand stuff, and just don't feel afraid of looking like an idiot. because you're not. And you'll also sometimes find out that you sort of like other people don't even know it that well either. And so you'll all of a sudden like you'll get to the point where you understand each other, but you might even be able to start to understand it further because you've asked more questions.
For sure. I feel like I've been guilty of that as well, where I'm just too scared to ask. But I think as I get older, I'm like, you know what? No, maybe they just didn't explain it well enough. It might not be you.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? You can just say to them, it's not your... You can just say it's me. I'm sorry that I don't understand, but just get there that you understand. Yeah.
And then a lot of people might dream about being their own boss and starting their own company. So do you have any advice on that front?
I don't think I necessarily wanted to be a CEO. I didn't want all the legal and administrative and regulatory and financial burdens. I just wanted to create a product and create a solution. But that sort of comes with it part and parcel. I think, if you want to be your own CEO, find something that you're passionate about and, think about it as a product almost first. And then, if you're getting traction and you've got, something happening, then you can start to build the business around it. It's nice to sort of start with the reason for being, like what your mission and what your purpose is, because the rest of the stuff is sort of administrative around that. But what's important is what you're trying to achieve.
Well, then last question is, what is next for Mys Tyler and for you as well? I know you have that entrepreneur mindset and you love problem solving. So do you want to develop more businesses in the future, or what's next?
I mean, I can't imagine doing anything other than Mys Tyler for the next few years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. Yeah, Mys Tyler has such big potential, but I mean, you're problem solving on a daily basis and we're still trying to get it right. So we launched a celebrity body double quiz in March last year. Then in August, we turned it into a mobile app. So you could go onto the app and find a celebrity body double. And we started recruiting real women behind the scenes. And then in February, we launched our contributors. The app is still very early stage. So at the moment, you can match with people and then follow them. We've just added the ability for users to save posts that they like, and contributors can see that. We're going to be adding in likes soon. And the reason this is important, like there's so much stuff that you realize as you're going through. Contributors are posting outfits, but if they're getting no feedback, they don't know if anyone's looked at it. They don't know if anyone likes it or if anyone cares. And so why would I be posting to something and getting no feedback? It's like being on a Zoom call, where the video's off and they're on mute and you're talking to yourself. So adding likes is really important because it's just a way for contributors to get feedback. But we're not going to show likes to regular users. So it's not going to be used to show who's popular. It's just totally there for contributors to see that they're getting feedback, that people are liking what they're doing and that people care. And then we'll be adding in notifications and comments. And then we want to add in filters so that when you're going into Mys Tyler and you're looking for a cocktail dress for cold weather, you can do a quick search and then bam, there are 2 dresses that are going to look perfect on you. So we're going to start adding more and more functionality in to make it a really powerful tool so you can really use it for specific shopping.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think that's the end of the interview for today. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me on the channel. And thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed that and found that useful.